Ahoy there! Kat McKenna here, first mate of the Fortune's Folly, and today I'd like to tell you all about the famous Irish pirate queen, Grace O'Malley. Now, Grace is a favourite of mine, being that she's a hero of my home country of Ireland and all. But did you know that only the English called her Grace? Her Irish name was Grania Nuella, and she was a fierce pirate queen, a hero to her people, and an enemy of England and Queen Elizabeth I. When her father died, Grania took over the leadership of the O'Malley clan by land and by sea. The English kept trying to take over Irish lands, and so Grace became a pirate, protecting Ireland from the increasing power of the English and harassing and looting the English ships at sea. In the late 1500s, Grania's entire family was taken captive by the English governor Sir Richard Bingham, so Grania sailed off to England to beg Queen Elizabeth for their release. Elizabeth agreed to meet with Grania, who caused a great stir in the English court upon her arrival, as she refused to bow before the English queen. Grania would not recognise Elizabeth as Queen of Ireland. However, Elizabeth believed that Grania meant her no harm and agreed to carry out their talks. Now, when they did get into discussion, it was all carried out in Latin, as Elizabeth spoke no Irish and Grania spoke no English. But after much discussion, the two women came to an agreement, and after a number of other compromises, Elizabeth agreed to return Grania's entire family and remove Sir Richard Bingham from his post in Ireland. And Grace, she had to agree to stop supporting the Irish lords and cease all of her piratical activities immediately. Now, these agreements didn't last very long on either side, you know. But isn't it empowering to think of these two great women of their day coming together to have discussions about what it takes to lead in a man's world? I'm proud to be a pirate like Grania Nuella, the famous Irish pirate queen. Now, coincidentally, it is March, and in addition to the fact that it is the month of the Irish holiday of St. Patrick's Day, it'd also be Women's History Month. And so I think that calls for having a Pirate of the Month club that includes a few other notorious females.
Ahoy there, I be Mercy Graham, the ship's cook, and I want to tell you a secret. I be part French. And so I want to tell you about me favourite French pirate, Jeanne de Clisson. In the 1300s, after her husband was executed by the French king Philip VI, the French noblewoman, Jeanne de Clisson, mercilessly hunted down his ships to avenge her husband's death. She would have her ships painted black and dyed the sails red to intimidate her enemy, which earned them the title, the Black Fleet. The Black Fleet patrolled the English Channel for French ships, especially those owned by King Philip and members of the French nobility. For her ferocity, the people started calling her the Lioness of Brittany. Jeanne and her pirates would slaughter the crew of the French ships and leave only 2 or 3 survivors so they could take the message back to the king that the Lioness of Brittany had struck again. Isn't that thrilling? Don't you go messing with my husband, or you'll hear this lioness roar.
One of my favourite female pirates is Rusla. Rusla was a Viking shield maiden and captain of a ship filled with other shield maidens. She sailed all around Iceland, Denmark, and the British Isles, pillaging, pirating, and living her best life. And she was also a princess. Her brother Sassandius, also known as King Thrawn, was king in her country. But he wasn't a very smart king, and he fell to the trickery of the Danish king Olmund. Now, when Rusla found out about this, she went back and waged war on the Danes in an attempt to avenge her brother. But during this conflict, she ended up overthrowing her brother, realizing that it was his idea to make this relationship. After she overthrew him, she went back to pillaging, pirating, and living her best life, and went down to Ireland, where she gained the name Ingla Ruda, which means the Red Maiden, because she was so bloodthirsty and never took captives. To this day, it is not known if this is real or imagination, but it's in 2 different countries where her legend stands. And who knows? There's no record of her death. Maybe she's still pirating and living her best life.
India Annie Jones to tell you about Jacqueline Delay. She was a pirate of the Caribbean and one of the few 17th century female pirates. Jacqueline came from Haiti. Her father was French and her mother was Haitian. Her mother died while giving birth to her brother. Jacqueline's father was brutally murdered when she was still quite young, and that left her to care for her brother. Now, there were few professions open to adventurous, strong-willed women, so Jacqueline turned to piracy, and she made a name for herself on the Caribbean seas. Jacqueline had a partnership with a French pirate, Anne d'Oliva. They had a crew and began plundering small boats. Now, that did not sit well with other pirates of the area, and soon a price was put on her head. To escape her pursuers and authorities as well, Jacqueline faked her own death and took on a male persona, and she lived as a man for some years. Eventually, her beauty and her striking red hair gave her away. When she gave up the pretense, she was called Back from the Dead Red. Jacqueline took a gang of hundreds of pirates and, with their help, took over a small Caribbean island in 1656, referred to as a freebooter republic. Now, she did die several years later while defending that island. A quote attributed to her is, "I couldn't love a man who commands me any more than I could love one who lets himself be commanded by me." Those are the words of a pirate.
Hello, Ivy Bones, helmswoman of the Fortune's Folly, and I'm here to tell you about American pirate Rachel Wall. Now, she wasn't always Rachel Wall. She was born Rachel Schmidt in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. But she didn't much like being Rachel Schmidt, and she didn't much like Carlisle, so she moved to the coast of America, where one day she was beset upon by other ladies jealous of her prettiness. But a strapping young man named George Wall came to her rescue. Then he swept her off her feet and married her, as every good fairy tale happens. Once they were married, they then moved to the port of Boston, for George was a fisherman. He went out to sea, leaving Rachel behind to be a servant girl in the houses there. When he returned several months later, he brought along with him 5 of his fellow sailors and their lovers. After a week of hard partying, he had lost all of his gold and money. So they decided to go back to sea. This time he took his love Rachel with him. Once they were upon the open waters, George had a brilliant idea. "Let's be pirates," he says. "Let's rob and kill people," he says. And of course everyone else said yes. So they borrowed a ship from another of George's friends and came up with this brilliant plan. They left Boston and went to what's called the Isle of the Shoals off the coast of New Hampshire. There, after stormy days, Rachel would maroon her boat upon the sandbars there. And as merchant vessels went past, she would stand aboard her boat, yelling, "Help! Help! We're stuck and sinking!" I'm paraphrasing, but that's the general idea. Of course, any good gentleman has to stop and help a lady in distress. So when the merchant vessels would approach, George's ship would come from behind and they would be attacked. Between the years 1781 and 1782, they are credited with attacking and taking down 12 merchant vessels, pirating over $6,000 in coin at the time, and innumerable valuables and shiny bubbles. After pirating for a year or two, George and the crew got washed out to sea by an accident, and Rachel decided the best thing she could do was return to Boston and start being a servant girl again. See, the problem is once you start stealing, you kind of always like to steal. There's a rush, there's a thrill. So Rachel would take her days off, wander down to the docks, and sneak aboard the ship, stealing goodies from inside. Unfortunately, she took a fancy to someone's hat one day, a Miss Margaret something or another. She decided the hat would look much better on her than it did on that lady. So, one night while Margaret be strolling by the docks, Rachel decided to attack her. She was going to cut out her tongue so she couldn't tell anyone who did it, but she was caught in the act. She was taken to court, where she was tried with robbery and assault. However, being the classy lady that she was, Rachel was demanded to be tried as a pirate. Though she never killed anybody, she just lowered them to her deaths like sirens do. The courts declined her request,
In 1789, on October the 8th, Rachel was hung for her thievery. It is said that as she went to the gallows, she said she commended her soul to God, that she was a horrible Presbyterian and she'd be only 29 years old. Did not want to be a fly on the wall of that execution. Not at all. We hope you've enjoyed your first edition of the Pirate of the Month Club. We thank you so much for tuning in. Be on the lookout next month for something special from one of our Scotsmen. I be Bones, houndswoman of the Fortune's Folly. Bye!